All right, welcome. I am Mary Sorensen. I am the executive director of Cuddle Party. And we wanted to talk today about a change that we've been talking about making from rules to agreements. So I've invited some folks here and we're going to introduce ourselves. I have been a Cuddle Party facilitator since 2014 and also a cuddleist, and I have multiple other trainings and other things that I do. And I'm very invested in communication and consent work and helping people learn how to keep boundaries and have good relationships. So that's what brought me to this work. And what brought me here today is that I want to help all of you who might be watching this. And hopefully this discussion will bring some clarity as to why we want to make this change and also help us figure out how we're going to make this change. So we'll discuss any barriers or concerns we might have. And I wanted to share it with people. So we're recording. So that's me. And then I would also invite you guys to share where you are and maybe one personal thing about you so we can get to know you better. And I am in Panama because I'm retired and it's beautiful out here today. And I am doing a musical. So I have a rehearsal right after this meeting. So I'm excited about that. So that was a quick introduction. I'd like to invite our next folk to introduce themselves. Les, would you introduce yourself with your name, where you are, maybe a little bit of your background and what brought you here, and then maybe one personal thing you're invited to share so we get to know you.
All right, thank you. And I'm Les Bender. I'm the, I guess, representative of the participants of the Cuddle Party events. And I've been a board member, I think, for about a year now, maybe, thereabouts. And yeah, I'm in Lombard, Illinois, which is a west suburb of Chicago. And it's warm here, like really warm. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this discussion because I think there's a lot of uh, like broader issues attached to this very narrow subject that hopefully we won't get too far into, but at least enough to let everybody know where we're at. And I am here because I began one-on-one cuddle therapy several years ago now, probably about 5 or 6, and was encouraged by my original cuddle therapist, Madeline Guanazzo, to see if I wanted to get involved with cuddle parties as well. And I'm, really interested in encouraging more cuddle parties and more awareness of cuddle community here in my neck of the woods. Right now, there isn't as much as I would like, but hopefully we'll see more. And as far as something personal goes, I did not come into the cuddle community or the cuddle therapies and cuddle parties the way most people do, because my trauma therapist recommended that I start seeing a cuddle therapist, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it was just what the doctor ordered. So there you
Great,
go.
Les. Yeah, I'm really glad you're here as a non-facilitator to represent, our other part of our community.
Thank you.
And we've just got Davika joining us too, so I just admitted her. And we're just doing introductions right now, Davika. So I like to, and we are recording this to see if we can get some training materials out of it. So, okay. Adam, would you care to introduce next?
Sure. My name is Adam. I'm in San Diego, California, and I was formerly a member of the board and am not at current time. What brought me into Cuddle Party? I came kicking and screaming. My first Cuddle Party was an unofficial party at a festival in California that I was a manager of. And when we got to the point of, okay, now you're free, go ask for what you want. And say your yeses and nos. I went into an absolute terror zone. I hadn't asked for what I wanted or known what I wanted for so long that I didn't even know I had them anymore. And I swore that as long as I had anything to do with it at all, that there would never be another cuddle party.
Mm.
And karmic vows are this sort of thing that either they bring you in there or you get faced with a number of different circumstances in which you have to rethink it.
Mm.
What ultimately brought me in was I was sitting in a cafe in Ireland talking with a woman who was very distraught, and we came to a point. I said, so what you're saying is that you would love to be held by a man with the absolute certainty that he wasn't going to hit on you? And she said, oh, tears down her face. Yes, that's what I want so much. I said, well, that's easy. You want a cuddle party. And we did a little search and there was none in Ireland. And I said, I'll be back. And I came back to California with a mission to become a certified cuddle party facilitator and go back to Ireland and have a cuddle party. Well, the best end to this story is that I met up with her a year later and we had a cuddle party. We did have cuddle parties, several in Ireland the next year, but we didn't manage to hook up specifically for her. But I may have set a record in terms of how quickly you can become certified. Had the pleasure of studying with Len and Madeline and Marcia, and here I am now, some number of years later.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, that's a
My
great story. I'm
passion
not
for
sure I've
cuddle-
heard that all the way through.
My passion for cuddle party has only gotten greater over time, and the absolute necessity, not only locally but globally, for this kind of connection and touch is perhaps one of the greatest health crises of our time. Forget COVID, it's loneliness that's killing people. And we
Yeah.
have the tools to work with that. So
Yeah.
anyway, thank you for listening to my story.
Thanks, Adam. Do you want to share anything personal so we get to know you better? Something you're excited about this week or something you love?
Yeah, I'm retired, which means that I'm working twice as hard as I ever did before.
Oh, I know, right?
But I do get a nap during the day.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm last night I had someone over for dinner to talk about being an assistant for cuddle parties. One of the things that I've missed is that my assistants have retired and gone on to other things. And I'm excited about working with a new person. We have a
Nice.
cuddle party scheduled for later in September.
That's awesome. Very good. Thank you.
Part of her job is to keep me on task.
Great. Cassie, would you go next?
Sure. Well, I learned about Cuddle Party through a Facebook post that was totally unrelated. But I had been single for several years by that point and just really needed somebody to hold me. And but there weren't any certified facilitators within my state. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. And so the closest was Chicago or Atlanta. So I'm like, well, I guess I have to get certified. So I became a facilitator and started doing, offering them in Ohio. And that was many.
Uh-oh, did we get a freeze? Oh, Cassie's frozen. Okay, when Cassie comes back, hopefully we'll come back to that. Davika, would you care to introduce yourself today?
Sure. Do I need to be on camera?
It's up to you.
Okay, cool. So my name is Davika Lyles. I am a transformative sexologist in Fort Worth, Texas. I first came across Cuddle Party or something like Cuddle Party when I was in college. I was in university, we were in the girls' dorm, and there was like this presentation or something. And I remember thinking, that would be great for other people, but there is no way I am doing that. I had a friend who is from Jamaica. She's very, very cuddly. And I grew up in a house where cuddling was not necessarily something we did all the time. And she used to like hunt me down to hug me, and it used to just irritate the crap out of me. And I remember hiding out from her one time because she just would hug me all the time. And I was like, oh my God. And then a few years later, after graduation and traveling, I found myself in Colorado, and I was, really deep into the community, sexology. I ran into some people who knew some people, and the next thing I know, I was at a dungeon, and I was speaking to the dungeon mistress. And first of all, I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I was just completely respectfully, professionally enamored with her. And she was setting up for a cuddle party. And I remember going to that. And what I really got out of that was one, there was one person there. She said no to everybody. She said no to everybody. And it was so powerful because people kept asking, even though she said no to everybody. And I later would go on to add that to my practice, but she was healing her no. And that was like, I was like, oh, that's powerful. And then another friend in the session, she had just lost her mom. And she was actually the one that invited me to go to the cuddle party. And she didn't want to be held. She wanted people to brush her hair because that's what her mom did.
Sweet.
And so she just had people the whole time brush her hair. And it was those two experiences, one dealing with and giving people space to deal with, confront, and powerfully take on healing an aspect of sexology that often leads to trauma or limitation. That's the first. I was like, okay. But then also a space for people to deal with grief. And the access to that is what actually had me then futurely become a cuddle party facilitator. And I remember while I was in my training, and I called that Jamaican friend, and I was like, I am in a cuddle party training. And she laughed so hard. She was like, do they know that you don't like to be touched? And I was like, I discovered in my training, it's not that I don't like to be touched. I just don't like to be touched without consent. And that was a long time ago. I'm now a mom. I have a very cuddly kid. I wore my kid. And I truly believe that irrespective of how many cuddle parties I have or don't have every year, having that be part of my practice as a sexologist has given me access to parenting conversations, sexological conversations, relationship conversations that are simply infused beyond what a cuddle party makes available. However, inside of the context of the cuddle party, it gives people a place to start. And it was I am a board member. I do sit on the board. I am the leader of the diversity, inclusion, and community care team. And it's just been an honor, especially for people of color, to be able to come to me, look like me, sound like me, have similar histories as I do, where touch maybe has some healing in it to be desired, and to actually start to shift conversations for myself and definitely for my child, who has been able to say, please don't touch me, respect my boundaries, since he was 3. So I really do, my life is inside of this work. And so thanks for asking me to introduce myself and share.
Excellent. Thank you, Davika. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to Cassie because she's back with us, it looks like.
Hopefully the signal will stay this time. I'm Cassie Deala. I am on the board and a secretary of the board. I've been on the board for about a year. I think it'll be a year in September. I learned about Cuddle Party from a Facebook post that had nothing to do with Cuddle Party, but 200 post comments down, there was a comment about a Cuddle Party. And I was like, wait, what? What's that? And I learned about it, found the website, learned about it. And it was interesting to me because I had just not too long before that gone through a divorce, and I was lonely and needy, but didn't want to get into the complications of sex and relationships and all that kind of stuff. And so this was just the perfect answer for me. Unfortunately, I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and the closest facilitators were either Chicago or Atlanta, and it just wasn't feasible for me at the time. So I became a facilitator, and Adam, I also trained under Len, which was amazing. My dear Santa Claus. And so that's been, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago that I certified. So something personal about me, I don't know, all kinds of things are crazy. Mom of 7. I adopted 4, a sibling group of 4, and that was in 2009. And now 11 grandchildren later, I am Oma. I took that as a grandma name because I was born in Germany. So Oma is the German form of grandmother.
Nice.
And so I'm excited to see where Cuddle Party is going to go from here.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for being here today for this discussion. I'm excited, and thanks for your introductions and sharing yourself with us and your time today. So I want to start this discussion by saying, I am the one that proposed that we change from rules to agreements. And it's something that has bothered me for a while as I go through the circle as a facilitator. And I actually have been calling them agreements as I introduced my own circle for several years. So when I was seeing some other people presenting the welcome circle and talking about it, it just was making me cringe more and more. So I presented it to the board as an idea of I believe that we should change this from rules to agreements. And my reason for that is that there's actually 2 reasons. We are consent educators, and in consent, it's the way that I understand consent and the way that Cuddle Party's vision is that consent is not that it's not the kind of consent where I say, I want to do something, and then you say yes or no. It's the kind of consent where we get together and say, this is my goal or my desire, and what's your desire, and is there a way that we can work together to meet our desires as an agreement? So it's a negotiation. It's a 2-party participation thing in my mind, and rules are more like there's authority there, there's power dynamic there, and of course there's power dynamic in agreements too, but I feel like agreements are more what's the word? It's more of an idea that all parties are involved, right? As opposed to one party is stating this is how it's going to be. And a lot of people are already socially engineered to not follow rules. So they're like, oh yeah, sure, that's the rule. I don't have to do that. I'll just say I'll do it, and they don't care. So I like to make it an active agreement. So I presented it to the board with that explanation, and the board voted unanimously that we should make the change. So I wanted to have this discussion with you guys to talk about what you feel about it, what your reasons are. We do have 3 of our board members here who were in on that discussion with me. And also to talk about what barriers or what kind of concerns do you have with that change, or how we can get it out to folks. So who would like to share first? Does anybody have anything burning they want to bring up first? Questions?
Well, I agree on the agreements. I think it's a much more inclusive language by saying, you know, we're all participating in this together. We're agreeing on these sets of guidelines of how we're going to participate. So I think it makes it, like you said, you know, people are kind of socialized to break the rules, and so and by calling it agreements, it's, you know, it's a by the language does make a difference, and so people, it just brings a barrier down, I think, by calling it an agreement. Now, I personally, whenever I go through them at a cuddle party, I think number 2 should be number 1, which is, you know, you don't have to cuddle with anybody you don't want to. I think that should be right off the bat, as well as, you know, of course the clothing stays on. But anyway, so I'm getting off track there. But
We'll talk about
I
that.
like the,
We'll have more discussions of other things. As we go.
I like the language. You know, as far as getting it out, we certainly would update the welcome circle. We'll include that in, you know, emails that go out to the facilitators, and we can talk about it on, you know, social media and things like that. I think, you know, there's lots of good ways of getting that out, and it's getting the facilitator buy-in as well.
Yeah. Adam?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to come to these meetings. Sorry, I haven't been able to do it more regularly. I usually remember them sometime Tuesday evening.
I know, matters.
On this topic, first of all, the welcome circle as it exists right now was something that Madeline and myself and Betty Martin, and I think Marcia was involved in really going through word by word some years ago. So I have somewhat of an attachment to it the way it is. About the question of agreements versus rules, I probably would be impossible for me to feel any more against a change like that.
So you're
And,
against?
Because an agreement, by the very nature of what was said here, is up for negotiation. So if you're starting a cuddle party and say we have an agreement 1, which is to close stay on, and somebody says, you know, I don't agree with that,
Then you were invited to leave.
that makes it a rule. That's why it's the 11 rules form a bedrock foundation that the rest of the experience is built upon. They're not open for negotiation. You either accept them and follow them, or you leave. And
But that is a negotiation.
I'm sorry?
But that is a negotiation. I have a boundary that I'm telling you what it is. You get to decide if you're gonna, if that will be consistent with your intention or not. And if the answer is no, then we don't have an agreement. We can't do it together.
Well, and so that means that you're open to some negotiation around that. Well, can we all be topless? Or is it okay if we're in our underwear? Or I disagree with it, and what happens is the welcome circle gets sort of co-opted into a negotiation around something that is really not negotiable. You have to ask and get verbal permission before you touch someone. Is that negotiable? Or is that a rule?
I hear what you're saying.
And this was something that I started out kind of on the other side of this, and almost got into a fight with Madeline over this some years ago about what's the difference between an agreement and a rule. And if you have a rule, be clear that you state it as a rule so that people are not going to think, oh, I can have some input on this now. Agreements are negotiable, they're collaborative. They are open to discussion. If it's a an agreement, then people are free as facilitators to use them or not. People who attend cuddle parties are free to follow these rules or not, or follow or contribute to this, and have a discussion. It makes it open for discussion at the time of the cuddle party, which makes it difficult for the facilitator. And in reality, you're talking about a rule. You're just playing with the language. I see Davika has a hand up on it, but and I could talk about this some more, but I think I've said enough in the moment.
Okay, I'd like to hear Davika's response.
So I don't know how to say this, but I'll just be straight. Language matters. And what you listed were a bunch of Caucasian, well-to-do, cis hetero, identified for the most part, people who came together to create this environment. And while I get that that may not have much to do about many things, especially in the US, as you know, I can't speak to Canada, but definitely in the US, it does set a cultural precedent. And while I understand what you're saying, I think that neither of those terms 100% allows for the complete buy-in and conversations that are going to impact over here, like as I'm looking at making it more universal for all people to have a say. And I really get, you know, Adam, well, you know, they can do this and they can do this and they can do this. And I really get, you know, what Mary is saying. And what I use is conditions for satisfaction. For the event to be satisfactory, for everybody to get what they are here to get, we need particular conditions for satisfaction. These conditions are ground level conditions. If we don't have these conditions, somebody's satisfaction is not going to be met or available, and conditions for satisfaction are not necessarily negotiable, but they do actually fulfill on what Mary is creating, which is I am aligning with maintaining the space to create mutual satisfaction. And we get to be responsible for cuddle party is training and development for people in their relationships. So maybe there is some room to discuss, you know, why do we have everybody keep their clothes on? Those are discussion points. Those are points where when you have people leave that space, they are freed up now to go and have those conversations in their lives. They are free to have those, that's what we're modeling. We're modeling the conditions for satisfaction, for me to feel safe, for me to feel, for us to feel, to us to experience. The conditions for satisfaction are such that everybody keeps their clothes on. Do we all align to have that be satisfactory? Awesome. So language matters. It is foundational in what people are creating. So it's not just semantics. It actually matters. And when we are creating a culture for all people, irrespective of their background, rules set by a bunch of white folks can be triggering for people, right? Agreements,
So
huh?
it triggers me every time. So
Every time.
yeah.
And especially if we are here to be creating a space where we are not ruled. We are not ruled. We are here to align. We are here to counter. We are here to decline. We are actually here to fundamentally demonstrate communication and conversations and opportunities to meld that with touch. And there gets to be conditions for satisfaction. There gets to be whatever you want to say, but rules and the rigor and the precision of rules does actually leave people with something. And so I get the whole, Adam, I get the whole like, well, it could be negotiated. Maybe. Maybe that's part of the process. Maybe that's part of the welcome circle. Is that, maybe, well, I don't want to take my clothes off. Okay, cool. Well, what do you want to do? And does that give everybody the space to be satisfied in their experience? And I just wanted to share that. That's what I've done with the words in my practice, is not of cuddle party like as a welcome circle, because I don't really do a lot of cuddle parties, but in my work and in my practice, what I use is neither of those words. I use conditions for satisfaction, neither rules nor agreements.
Mm. Thank you, Davika.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Les has a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Davika. You covered a lot of ground that now I won't have to. But, on that list of descriptors, another two at least include ableist and classist. Listening to you, Adam, and in fairness to you, and in alignment with you, everything that you said about what you were concerned about is objectively accurate. It is objectively observable that these things can happen. But like Davika was pointing out, it comes from, I guess, a culture and an environment and a life experience where I am told, at least that things like a negotiation or a gray area of any sort is an opportunity for exploitation, an opportunity to take advantage, to appropriate, to abscond with, and make available for one's own selfish purposes. I come from a world, okay, and I from a life experience where things like negotiation are to be avoided whenever possible, just for the simple reason that I came from an environment where if I was put in a place where I needed to go to negotiate, I would lose. All right. And one thing about cuddle parties and cuddle therapy and this community in general is that I can negotiate as long as I do it as mindfully and honestly and carefully as I can. I find that while I don't need to exploit anybody, there's nobody out to exploit me. There's nobody out to take advantage of or appropriate my my presence for their own ends. One thing that I've always noticed about cuddlists and cuddle party facilitators, and most of the people I know who have done any cuddling as participants, is that it represents a shelter from all of these things where negotiation or wiggle room or influence or however you want to put it is something to be feared and avoided. And in the time from when cuddle parties began until now, all of the landscape, and all the kind of cultural tectonic plates have shifted under everybody's feet. And right now, I agree with you 100%. There's just seeming like an endless army of people that just, they're with their last breath, they will look for any and every opportunity to exploit somebody somewhere somehow. So that's going to be a danger if we make this change, but honestly, it's going to be a danger if we don't. Those people exist, right? And there's nothing we can do about that. But
Mm.
for a larger cohort of people like me to feel comfortable, and to feel confident that while they don't want to take advantage of anybody, they're less likely to be taken advantage of. The simple reality is when I hear someone invite me into an agreement, I have a certain reaction to it. If somebody tells me these are the rules, I have to overcome, like what Davika was talking about. Like I said, this environment where, I am uh, I'm the participant, under the authority of the facilitator, and that, I'm subject to exile at any moment if I'm perceived to have broken the rules. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know how easy it is to follow, but the simple reality is that, as Davika said, I mean, the words matter, and which ones we use have an effect and have a knock-on effect, not just with the participants that make it to the other side of the door, but also the ones that are at a distance from us observing. Some of them are like me. Some of them are people of color that, there's a lot of skepticism, and, there's certainly a lot of skepticism, in some areas of the, not very well to do, I'll put it like that. Working class, in my case, sometimes working poor. And while I agree with you in principle, that the environment needs to be kept safe, and it needs to be kept, lack of a better term, in order, that is, to avoid chaos, right? Because chaos definitely brings out the exploiter.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
we have that now, right? I mean, is there having one word or other, depending on how big your party is? Like I said, it's it's gonna matter to some people, like again, like myself, in ways that isn't not really that important to somebody that's really really intentionally there to, like Mary said, break the rules because the rules are there. I'm not that kind of guy, and I find that I'm very much not alone. And when I go out and try to, encourage people to take advantage of, sorry, lack of a better term, to be part of this community, it becomes very difficult, if I show them what we have to offer, and it includes, a hierarchy of that sort. My I guess, modus, and the modus of a lot of people like me is, if there are rules in some event or community or whatever, that are, you know, that are handed down from on high, I run the risk of breaking them by accident, you know, and then, I end up being exiled from something, that I now have an experience of. Better that I should just not experience it at all.
But with
No.
agreements, if you're part of the process and you're in there, does it land better for you?
It gives me the opportunity to, it gives me the opportunity to agree, right?
Mhm.
Voluntarily,
Yeah.
and to take that upon myself.
Mhm.
The thing about rules is, or the nice thing about rules is that, even for somebody like me, that means, it's the rules. And so I'm not responsible for doing anything except abiding by them, being compliant. Because of my healing journey, I've learned that there's a chasm of difference between compliance and willing participation. I have been a compliant most of my life, and I hate to tell you how that resulted.
Mhm.
It ended up real bad. But when I became a willing participant and felt the responsibility and the empowerment of saying, yeah, I do agree with this, and I will abide by it because I want to. That
You
makes
look-
all the difference in the world. But
Yeah, it does.
anyway,
Thank you.
thank you.
We haven't heard from Cassie yet. Do you have anything? Are you there, Cassie?
I don't know that I have anything to add.
Okay.
I acknowledge, the work that Adam and our
Mhm.
our founders have created,
Mhm.
and like Les said, things have changed. The world has shifted considerably, and that's why voices like Davika's are very important to have in the discussion as well. So it's interesting that I thought agreements was going to be the correct word, and maybe there's a better word, or maybe there's a better language. I don't know. It definitely is worth a discussion.
Yeah, that's why we're discussing today.
That's why we're discussing.
That's why we're discussing. Exactly. And I wanted to share with you guys something that tipped me for why I decided to bring it to everyone and not just keep it to myself. I was reading Consent Culture, by Creating Consent Culture, Marsha B. and Erica Scott wrote this. And the chapter 2 on what is consent culture, when I read this, I was like, oh yes, we have got to make this change. Because it says one of the common misconceptions about consent is that it's about getting permission. And while permission is a part of consent, a permission-based model is limited because it doesn't create space for more than one person's desire or wanting. And if you skip forward, it says a fuller model of consent is an agreement about how you're going to interact or share space together. It's not about permission, it's about agreement. And when I read that sentence, I'm like, yes. And that's why I want the word agreement instead of rules. It's not about getting consent, it's about creating consent. And Adam, I do want to address your fear that it's negotiable in the moment. There are negotiations, and there are all types of negotiation. In the end, having a boundary means I will talk to you about this boundary, but there is a line in the sand of like, yes, cuddle parties are clothed, they are non-sexual. That is a boundary. I would like to have your agreement that you will abide by that, that will meet what you want for your intention and what we're doing here for creating our container. And if you don't agree, then you have the choice. It's a choice, right? To go somewhere else. And that's how any boundary works, I think. So in my mind, I feel like it's better. Because people are just so conditioned to not follow rules or to be, steamrolled by rules. But it's not that it's negotiable in the moment. We will have these boundaries that make it a cuddle party. Um, and but we can discuss it, and it needs to be active agreement. As Les said, it's the difference between compliance and willing participant. Adam. Adam? Yes.
Um, first of all, I want to thank you, Davika, for your input. And I agree with you that words do matter, which is one of the reasons why I feel strongly about this. But I was doing a training not too long ago, and we came to a point in the training where I said, okay, everybody, take a deep breath in, let it out with a sigh. Ah, And then a little bit later on in the same training, I said, okay, everybody, deep breath in, let it out with a sigh. And everybody felt good. And this one person said, why are you being so bossy? Why are you telling me how to breathe? And I was like, wow, that's point well taken. This is not a rule. This is not a demand that I'm making. So after that, I was clear. It's like, this is an invitation.
Invitation.
And if I say take a deep breath in together, you don't have to do that. It's an invitation to join us together to do something together and something that might feel good. And it made all the difference in the room. My point is that it's okay to have rules. We have a rule that says you drive on the right side of the road. That keeps us from everybody sort of moving in the same direction. And you accept that or you don't get to drive. And it's okay to have one of the things that I would like to see, which is along these lines, it's different, is including the language, the possibility of language of yes, if, and no, unless with invitations. You know, if you're a no, say no, or it could be I'm a no unless these conditions are met, and being able to model negotiation in that kind of a way. But having a negotiation or an agreement that people have to either follow or leave makes it a rule. You're just calling it something different. And it feels nicer to say agreement. But the fact of the matter is that which one of the I guess we could drop the 11th one about having water, because people have water bottles now. This was back when people had solo cups. Yeah. I hear you, and it makes for a softer, gentler input, and it may be but it also, if things are based on agreements, then facilitators can decide whether or not they want to use the word rule or agreement.
I guess they can, I suppose. I use the word agreement.
You know,
I still party.
I was just going to say, the board and the community recently went through, sort of a, I guess, failure of or bending, I would call, corruption of these rules as rules, in the form of, a rule that cuddle parties not be, a dating opportunity, that was, sort of unspokenly agreed to by the facilitator. We lost that facilitator, not with us anymore. And like I said, Adam, from a certain point of view, you are absolutely right. The boundaries that people are encouraged to set for themselves, need to be honored, and they need to be recognized, as part of that person's humanity and dignity. But also, like I said, from my perspective as a participant, the idea that I am agreeing to it, as a condition of being on, being at the cuddle party, becomes my responsibility and part of my dignity. And one of the reasons that I kept coming to cuddle parties after the first one I went to was that, I started to really feel, I started to really feel responsible and able to be active in making sure that these things stayed in place. But by my own intention and by my own willingness. Again, I totally understand what you're talking about because I have been in the hands of people that, take a look at a rule and see an opportunity to exploit. Okay? And, so I was exploited. Right? But I guess, if it was that simple and, the entire community needed to be, under that pressure to conform, I'd be okay with it, because then it would limit my sense of responsibility, but it would expand my sense of safety, right? But I've come to find out that makes for smaller parties. It makes for parties that don't include very many people like me. And like I said, I'll just go ahead and be selfish and say there are not enough people like me attending cuddle parties. And, the most painful part of it is that I understand why. They fear rules not because they won't be allowed to break them, but because they fear, what will happen if they break them by accident. I come from a world where, in most cases, if I make a mistake, or if I fail, or if I uh, uh, if I screw up, there's no path to redemption. Okay?
Mhm.
I mean, that has been my life, right? Anything that I have ever done wrong or failed to do right, I've paid for on a very permanent basis. Okay? The people, most people that I've wronged in any real way in my life, I will never hear from them again.
And Les, do
Okay?
you
They're
think
gone forever.
active participation in an agreement model would have helped you or will help you in the future?
Yeah. Like I said, it makes me responsible. Yeah. But if I make it as far as, attending the party, it makes me willing to
Mhm.
take that responsibility, and
Okay.
it makes me aware of it, right?
Good.
I really feel the attachment to the word rule, for one thing, and the concept of it being, just imposed. I really feel the kind of comfort that comes with that. I do, and I also have awareness that, there are a lot of people out there in the world that, like I said, they take one look at the word rule and say, here's an opportunity to, upset the apple cart and get away with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My choices are, I can either sit and whine and moan about it, which I have done, not here, not since I began healing, but that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
Poor little old me. Right. Or, I can find places and communities and events where I don't have to worry about that, because I'm taking my part in the collective responsibility to make sure, like I said, that the people who are involved don't want to break the rules, right? Because they don't see them as rules, and they don't see them as something to be feared and used against us. Right?
Mhm.
I say, if I hadn't had that lived experience, I would shut up. Okay. But I
Yeah.
have, right? So, I have to think of it that way for the sake of the people who are already in the community, who already attend cuddle parties and,
Mhm.
uh, benefit from cuddle parties, but the vast ocean of people who, like I said, they don't come not because they're not aware, but because, like I said, they fear that environment for
Yeah.
a lot of reasons, just like I did.
I'd really like to hear from Davika if you're complete, Les, because she's got her hand up.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
sure.
Okay.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you, because I do have to head off. So here's the thing, and it's just going to speak to a little bit about what maybe in the unspoken. Les kind of touched on it. I don't think Adam said anything to it directly, but I can hear it in his concern and attachment. And if I'm off base, then please, redirect. But what we haven't talked about is the legality of this whole thing, right? Like, we haven't talked about what happens if and when somebody violates the rule, right? Oh, almighty rule. Somebody violates the rule, now who's on the hook for it? Well, Cuddle Party is. Cuddle Party is on the hook when somebody doesn't follow the rules. We are on the hook. However, when somebody violates the agreement, the focus that we now hold shifts. I'm going to sue Cuddle Party because this happened to me at this event. I got that. I got that you're going to sue us. And now we actually have some recourse because our agreements, the written agreements, the spoken agreements, the agreements were violated by this other person, not followed. Followed is a whole different thing. It's an agreement. It's the same thing when you agree, well, and all that bloody that you clicked to get onto the Zoom call, you passed by a whole bunch of blah, 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 blah agreement. When you have a credit card or you have agreements, and that means that now you are on the hook. Not just Les was kind of touching on it, but I want to nail this in the head, like put the nail in the coffin. Who's gonna get sued? Okay, cool. Let's just stop dancing around this shit. Who's gonna get sued? All right, they violated our rules. That's on us. Now we have to sit here and do all this introspection. The Dick team has to do all this extra work to make sure that we've said what we need to say, that we've trained all our people. It's 100% on us. From a legal standpoint. But from an agreement standpoint, we have now created partnership. We have now had not just our environment held by our people, 100% on us, losing facilitators because they're afraid, because facilitators are afraid of using the wrong word or saying the wrong thing at the right time, and blah, 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 we're going to get canceled, all these rules. And now you have created a partnership in the legality of agreement. And I really, I feel like that's not been said. We all know that I say the thing that is in the unsaid. So I have fulfilled my quota for the unsaid being said. And now I feel I can leave in the next 10, 15 minutes, having fulfilled the space that I have come to be known as. I've done it twice now. I think that's good enough. And Mary, I give it back to you, but on a legal standpoint, where we square ourselves is 100% responsible to ensure that people follow the rules and or that we create partnership and that our agreements are aligned on, clearly stated, and then followed. And then we have a recourse if a person does not actually do what they aligned to do versus they didn't do what we told them. So as the president, I yield that to you, but I just wanted to say that because I felt like it was bubbling up in the space, but nobody had access to it. And the moment that I heard it, I was like, okay, I'm going to say it.
Thanks, Davika.
Yeah,
I love how you bring these more business-minded things to our table, because I didn't even think of that, honestly, but that completely makes total sense to me, actually. So, yeah, I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, welcome. I think where I got it was I was listening to Les and I was listening, just listening for that which would make a difference, what's needed and wanted. And what's needed and wanted is, why do we have this in the first place? We have it to protect ourselves. We have it to protect one another. What are we protecting ourselves from? We're protecting ourselves from making sure the space is safe. What else are we protecting ourselves? We're protecting ourselves from being sued.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what happens over there in the listening. So, I really get that that might not be what was there when they were creating it. Maybe it was just the safety, but those times that this thing was created, people weren't canceling each other for what people get canceled for these days.
Yeah, things have changed. I think even in
Things
the
have
time I was
changed.
party, that's just changed so much.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we get to have agreements, and we gave our word, and you did not give your word. And maybe in the agreement is something that is said that, like, should you violate the agreement and cause some lack of safety, maybe that needs to be something, because times have changed. People are, I mean, really, they've changed from like 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And so
There,
I just wanted to say that. And I'm complete.
Thank you, Davika. Oh, Cassie's back. Good. I just wanted to
Yeah,
acknowledge
I missed, I'm
comment and
sorry,
then-
I missed.
Ah.
Oh, yeah, I just missed her last line. What was about 20 years ago?
Oh, things have changed. We've just changed. Our whole culture has changed, since this was
Yeah.
first put together, and since it was like, yeah, rules made sense a while ago, but now, the way people are growing up and the way that word is received and what it means, and talking about this collaborative consent model that is part of our vision and our values of Cuddle Party. I just think rules doesn't make sense for us anymore. I think we need agreements.
Right. Another thing that occurred to me while Davika was talking is just that, and this is for Adam to consider, the kind of participant that you're, I think, concerned about, since since all of this got started, there are plenty of other venues, where things are a little more feral, and there's a lot
Spicy.
more wiggle.
Spicy.
Yeah, spicy. And whether it's by agreement or by the rules, we collectively just don't participate in that. And as I said, I'm looking for any opportunity to make this as attractive and inviting as possible, not to those people, because I want for them to just pass us by in favor of something they can more easily exploit. But I'm trying to look for opportunities to attract the people that need and want to be able to help build a community by agreement that suits their needs, right? And also suits their already at least, like, in my case, overdeveloped sense of I don't know, isolation and lack of community. And it kind of comes out to that, is this a community or is this a hierarchy? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of tension there, and I totally understand that. Mary and I have talked about having having some level of hierarchy in order to maintain productivity and order. But on the other hand, I personally still harbor a great fear and skepticism in spaces where I feel like I can be taken advantage of by those who wield the power of the rule.
Mm.
I wish that wasn't true, and maybe I'm oversensitive to it, but that's been my life.
Yeah.
Whenever there was rules, I always ended up on the short end. It
Thank you,
sucks,
Matt.
but that's the way it is. So,
Yeah.
thanks.
I'd like to come back to Adam and see how you're feeling with this discussion. Has anything changed, or What do you, are you still the
Well-
same?
I still think that what you're changing the name of something, but it's essentially a rule. But I'm
Mhm.
also really, I'm hearing the resistance to rules.
Mhm.
And the having in training for training facilitators, part of the training is what to do when somebody doesn't follow the rule, how to deal with it. And I've only had to deal with that once. I had to bring somebody out send somebody away who was drunk. But also to remind people who are getting a little frisky, and how to have skillful interruptions.
Mhm.
But as I was listening to people speak, and I was like, well, what would happen there? What if the first 6 were rules and the last 5 were agreements? Because the agreement that you would be in harmony with any other relationships that you might have, that's really not enforceable. That's a suggestion of behavior that's going to save you a lot of emotional paperwork. So looking at what are the things that are not negotiable.
Mhm.
Asking for your touch is not negotiable. We don't.
I wanna challenge that, Adam, because I know you don't quite see it this way. It is negotiable. If I don't want to ask for your touch, I am just not allowed to be at this event. You get to choose that. That's a choice. That's a negotiation. Like I choose that I want to be nonverbal and I don't ask for touch. Okay, well then that's my boundary. I'm not going to interact with you and you can leave this event. That is a negotiation.
Yeah, you're right. And sometimes people will say, I've got a blanket yes
Yeah,
to
sometimes
so
I
and
do.
so. This is some so. No, I see the point in there.
Mhm.
I think that the foundation of some rules creates a container of security. It creates the space where the facilitator has the freedom to be able to do what they're doing. And I pulled out my copy of the welcome circle. The option to leave part, actually the language in there is for those of you who stay, you were significant. First of all, there's a time for questions and negotiation there. It's a
Mhm.
place where things can be negotiated. And then finally, you're signifying by your attendance that you understand the Cuddle Party rules as we've gone over them, and that you agree to adhere to the Cuddle rules and communication agreements. So you were sort of including that sort of softer, gentler agreement to follow the rules as they're set forth as best that you can.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're going to be the best and most conscientious cuddler you can be. So again, there's not the threat of exclusion unless there's something certainly egregious, and that happens so rarely. I think most of the time people just need to be reminded.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
ask a question? Can I ask a question really quick? Are we going for agreement or are we causing alignment? Because agreement is different than in this particular case, re-upping the word. Agreement is, I agree, and it kind of is this. It's kind of the fundamental example of what we're talking about, right? We have 5 people on this call.
Mhm.
Alignment would be more than 50, more than 51% or more is alignment. That's what we look at when we're talking about, like, quote unquote voting or whatever, but we don't call it that. We call it alignment. And so we would have with, I can't speak for Cassie, I can't because she hasn't really gotten to speak, but with Mary, Les, and myself, we would have alignment. We would have the alignment necessary to change it to agreements, even if Cassie or Adam did not agree. And so what I am a question about is, are we here to enroll them in agreement and have them agree because they might not agree? Or are we here to get a consensus for alignment? And that's gonna help me be in the listening for the last 4 minutes that I can be in the listening. So are we here for agreement or are we here for alignment? That's just, and it may not be that we're here for either at this time, but I'm just looking at what is the outcome that we're standing in. Are we standing in agreement and like we gotta, gotta fight for our position and everybody, like that? Or is it like alignment and just we walk away whether we agree or not, but what do we align on is this is the direction that we're going?
Yes, so my position for having this is that the context is the board has already voted that this is happening.
Got it.
Unless the board comes back, 3 members of the board come back and say, wait a minute, we need to discuss this again. Otherwise it's going forward. But what I wanted to do with this call was to make sure that our community was in hopefully in agreement, but at least in alignment, and also to address like what are the concerns and what are the problems, and maybe we do need to bring it back into the board and say, wait a minute, did we really think this through all the way? And if enough of us think that, we'll bring it back and discuss it with the board, and we can change our minds. We can change our minds anytime, just like Cuddle Party, And of
Got it.
course,
So-
who is one of our primary staff and volunteers doing the training, his voice is very important and I want to hear it. So I wanted to create space for that and see, if there was something that came out that we absolutely need to reconsider perhaps, or I don't know. So that was my purpose for this.
So what I hear you actually creating is the opportunity for people to be complete in communication with an alignment that has already taken place. The alignment has already been accepted, and you're just making sure that you did complete work, make sure that people had an opportunity to say what was there for them if they had not had that opportunity. And I think Adam and Cassie, I wasn't also on the call, so I imagine, that those are the people that are of value in this conversation to you, because I imagine you and Les have already made that word. So then the conversation is, are Cassie, because I'm complete. Like I'm complete with the alignment. I align with the alignment. I don't have anything other than that. But are Cassie and Adam complete?
I want to consider all of the things to make sure that we are making the right choice, and those
Yeah.
kind of, and how will we implement as well for people like Adam that have a very big discomfort around like, no, it has to be rules, it should be agreements. Like how could we implement that so that from your point of view, Adam, that you can see that it is a strong boundary, even if maybe by your terms it's softer language. Cassie, did you have something?
Oh,
I'm
Well,
sorry.
I was just going to respond to Davika that I was at the board meeting that voted for the term agreement. So yes, I'm in alignment with that.
Okay, cool. So then it's just a matter to have to have Adam, who does not agree, and we're clear that he does not agree, and we acknowledge his lack of agreement. Is he at a place that he can be complete with the alignment?
is that a question for me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I gotta let that settle a little bit. I think that you're making a mistake because there's something that you want to behave like a rule. You just don't want to call it a rule.
Okay, got it.
And
So
in my,
they-
in my role of bringing something to facilitators in training who are working their way through the welcome circle, this question hasn't come up from people who are in the training, or at least not that I've heard. But yeah, I think my concern around it is I think that you want something to act like a. Is this in? I'm trying to remember if this is in the welcome circle or if it's someplace else.
So I
You might-
totally heard. I heard what you said. I heard that you think that they are making a mistake.
Right.
My next question is, albeit that you think that they are making a mistake, Are you comfortable now that the board has aligned? Would it be comfortable, or would it be too much outside of your line of scope for you to present what the board has aligned on as the training? That not that they get to choose the words or whatever, but that this is the way that we are moving forward. And without putting in, I think they're making a mistake. Would you be able to train people effectively in the language of cuddle party agreements, even though you don't agree and or align with the word agreement? Is that possible for you?
Is that a rule or is that an agreement? Do I get to negotiate that more, or are you asking?
Well,
me-
you're the
Will I
you're the
follow- Will I follow?
you're the facilitator of the training, correct? And
Right.
so if the agreement of the training is that you present the training the way that the board has aligned for the training to be presented. Now, if you choose not to do that, then what gets to happen is they get to have a different facilitator present the training that can align or whatever actions that the board decides to take in that space. And I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying it would be very similar to aligning or not aligning to the actions of a cuddle party. Then that they get to find someone who will, or get until will.
And again, my question is this using the sort of the discussion that we're having, is this a rule that's being passed down from on high? Or is this a negotiation?
Well, I think the
agreement?
negotiation would be, I mean, you'd probably hear it as a rule. I'm sure Mary would hear it as a negotiation. And what I'm asking is, right, like as a trainer, as somebody who trains people, as somebody who develops training, as an instructional designer, if I have somebody who does not align and agree to deliver the training as it's designed, that is their choice not to align with developing the training and delivering the training the way it has been written. And then that is their negotiation. I'm not going to do the way it looks like in my world. I have nothing to say about Mary or anybody else, but the way it looks like in my world is I'm not going to deliver this the way that it's been written. And they say, awesome, we will find someone who can.
Well,
The fact of the matter, Davika, is that the role that I have in training is around facilitation and not so much around the welcome circle. We do an analysis of the welcomes. Yeah, and actually it does come in there. I'd like to have an opportunity to have a deeper conversation with Mary on this.
Sure.
And see how that would look in terms of we've got an experiment that we're right in the middle of right now. We've got two people who have done the welcome circle breakout, and we've got a new rubric that we want to apply to that. So it would look in there and see, does this, to tell you the truth, I don't think it makes that much difference to me. I think that you're making a mistake, and it's a linguistic mistake to call something a negotiation when it's really a rule. And probably what will happen is that at some point further along the line, there'll be some awkwardness around that, and people will want to change it back. But that's not something that I'm going to worry about right now.
So I do think this will be important as we decide how to implement that. Of course, we want our trainers to be on board with our message and our vision, and in agreement, Adam, I hope, when we get to that point. But I think that is a little further down the line. So it is an important question, Davika. Thank you. I kind of want to table that for right now, because I'm really hoping as we keep this discussion on the topic of why the change and what it would mean, that we can figure out how to implement it together in a way that would make sense to everybody. And I also wanted to say that I did look up like the definitions, of course, the classic thing that everybody does, right? So the definition of a rule is a prescribed guide for conduct or action and it's a regulation prescribed by the founder. You know, and it is something that you're supposed to agree to, as we ask in the welcome circle at the end, like, will you agree to these rules? But an agreement, it just doesn't have so much hierarchy built into it. It's under agreement, it says it's a harmony of opinion. It's the action of agreeing. So it's more active instead of passive. For me, rules are passive. And like somebody tells me it's a rule, even if I said I agree, just like you said, like the terms and agreements. Yeah, sure, I checked the box that said I agree, but I didn't read those. I have no idea what they are. I didn't agree to it. So anyway, I think we can have space for discussion to be able to hopefully be able to present it in a way that will work for Adam, that you can be on board. And we do have, I want to get that more in the future. And of course, Adam, as a member of our organization, you can bring concerns to the board of, like, if you really think that something is not happening. Hi, okay, Davina has to go. Okay, see. Anyway, yeah, I would like to come to agreement on it. But if you want to see it that way, it has been approved by the board and it is going to happen. But there's room to make it happen so that it can be in a way that everybody can be with us, I hope. That's my vision. Cassie?
Well, I was just going to throw in some other language that may or may not be appropriate. Is the term code of conduct, that we agree to this code of conduct, you know, as we've presented it, that, you know, that people are agreeing to behave in the way that we've listed here.
Yeah. Adam, I still see you look very concerned. Are you you're not frozen, are you?
Oh, I'm
Okay.
just thinking, actually, I was thinking about changes that I've made in the welcome circle over time that I just unilaterally decided. It's like the 2-foot rule was in there, and you know, and realizing that that's very ableist language.
Yeah.
And so just, you know, and I just took it out.
Yeah.
I had access to the document, and I'd be curious you to hear how you said you've been using the agreement.
I've been calling it agreements for probably since COVID, or probably before, just because it felt so wrong to me. Every time I said rule number 1, I was like, no, this is an agreement. I need you to agree to this if you want to stay and be part of our community. We need agreement. We need active agreement. We need to create consent together. And my community has been great. They've loved it. And I feel like making it an agreement, since I changed it to agreements, I feel like people are more actively agreeing than if I said it was rules, where it's a passive process. Like, here's a rule, you have to follow it. I feel like that's very passive, like, and people don't have to necessarily, even though at the end we say, can you agree to this? Like I try to get agreement on each one as we talk about it. And
actually, some of them have that built into it.
What, Adam?
Some of the rules have that built into it. Raise your hand if
Yeah, raise your hand. Yep, say raise your hand.
Sort of built in there already. Yeah, the 2-foot rule was in the 2-foot rule was in rule, I forgot, 4.
Use your 2 feet, walk away. Yeah. Not everybody can do that. We got the freeze response from a lot of people now too. Yeah, so it's just not a thing, even if you have 2 feet. So I'm glad that's out. But we're gonna be doing a more deeper dive into the training as a whole and the welcome circle with our training development team as we look at reviewing our training and what, you know, as a group, and how we can improve it and add some of these things. Such
When
as
is that happening?
it's starting right now with this discussion. So yeah. But we've been talking about it for a long time and we've got a lot of background conversations, but I'm trying to start getting action on it as we speak, literally. So, yes. And you're invited, Adam, of course. So you'll know what's going on. And of course you can always set up, we can talk individually anytime you want.
Yeah, I'd
So-
like to hear, I mean, one way of doing this is to just go into the document where it is, so that
Mhm.
any future downloads will have agreement in it instead of rule, and
Yeah.
just make that change and let that go forward and let it evolve over time.
Yeah, we could do it that way. I was hoping with this discussion to give some of the background of why, and then also figure out what are the barriers we might get hooked up on, and try to talk about that ahead of time. So that we might be able to avoid misunderstandings, and make sure everybody can be on board with it. That was my point for this discussion, and for recording it, so we can share that with our community, and they can understand what our background was of why we made the change and how we made the change. So, yeah. Do
Yeah,
you feel
some of this, from my point of view, Adam, again, in fairness to you, and in recognition of your position on this, is, again, from the perspective of a participant, who came into this community and all of this activity from the perspective of, somebody whose main fear was not, getting caught breaking the rules, but rather having, having the manipulation and I guess, capacity to bend and corrupt those rules so that, I get taken advantage of. That I know it's very difficult to understand that, but it's a very real thing, for people, for any person, who comes from a position of not ever having experienced, the, I guess, pattern of successful negotiation. Yeah, that just was never my strong suit. Right, so I'd always come out on the wrong end of it, but it was mostly because, I was always negotiating from a position of weakness. And like Devika pointed out, even even in civil court, there's a big difference between a set of rules imposed on an activity or institution or whatever, and a partnership agreement between two equals. And like I said, we're back when all this got started, and I certainly was not part of it. I was still, when all of this got started, I was very sick, so I knew nothing about it. But looking back on everything I've seen and heard, I understand exactly why, it was appropriate to make it rules,
back then? Yeah.
to say these are rules. And I dearly wish that the kind of changes in culture and society that have gone on between then and now, I wish every day that they never happened, but they have. And because of that, like I said, it is the person like me, right, who
Okay.
stands the most to lose if if the status quo doesn't, kind of, I guess, move with these times. These are not good times. They're not,
Thank you.
but in order to make them better,
I just wanted to.
we got to
Okay.
do something. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Les. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was trying. I was trying to
Sorry.
give Cassie a chance to give it out
Yeah, I'm
take,
sorry.
but that's okay. You were not complete, Les. Are you complete now?
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm good. I'll shut
right.
up now.
Good. All right. Yes, we had people who had to drop off. So yeah, this is something I think we're gonna work on a little more of how we're gonna do it. And I don't really want to be as simple as let's just go in the welcome circle and change it. I really do want to have some explanation for folks. And that was part of the reason of this of this call being recorded, this discussion. So I appreciate you being here with us, and Davika and Cassie too that had to drop out. But I'd like to give you guys a chance to like give your finishing words if you have any. Adam?
What do you imagine for a rollout?
What do I imagine for what? I'm sorry?
A rollout of this, you want to change the welcome circle, and how do you imagine telling people that's there, and how much choice do individual facilitators have in whether they like the word rule or they choose the word agree?
Well, I think we'll have some kind of an article. We'll have some written something based on some of the information we talked about today that will be in the article of the explanation of why we think this change is necessary. And that that could be a chapter in our new training, maybe. And it could be something we put out on social media to share with folks as we say, look, there's this change and more coming, you know, we're addressing the training, come help us work on it. But I want to take into account what you're saying, Adam, like, is this negotiable? And no, we have non-negotiable boundaries for Cuddle Party. Absolutely. Completely said. I hope that's what you said, right? That was your concern. Like, these are non-negotiable boundaries for Cuddle Party. And to you, that means the word rule is more appropriate. Am I hearing you correctly?
I'm sorry, say that again.
There are non-negotiable boundaries for having an event be a Cuddle Party. And for you, that means the most appropriate word for those boundaries is rules. Is that what you said?
I think so, yeah. I think that they are rules. You're just not calling them a rule. And am I going to make this a boundary? No, because I think it's still a rule.
Mm.
It's good. What I want is the facilitator to have the strength behind them of being able to take. I mean, it's not an equal relationship. The facilitator is in charge of the space. They have to hold the space of the container from the time people start arriving, from the time they start marketing their event all the way through to the end, and any feedback they get there. They're responsible for holding that space. And I want them to be able to come over to somebody and say, hey, you know, you're making out a little bit heavy, or you need a different kind of shirt, or you know, you're welcome to stay, but you can't open your bottle of wine. And that's actually never in any of the rules about can people bring wine?
Yeah, we need to be more explicit about these are non-alcohol, non-drug. The Cuddle Party is substance free. Yeah. I don't
Medicinal
think that's really in
marijuana,
there.
you know, but the facilitator has to have the authority to be able to decide who can stay and under what conditions. And
You don't think they can do that as an equal member of the community that has the weight of the community agreement behind them?
I think that the act of being a facilitator, you step out of your role as a member of the community, and you become a leader in the community for that period of time.
Yeah. Are you leader of the community is not an equal member of the community?
Not at that time, because they're holding space for the rules.
Mm.
They get the other participants don't, you know, they may point out to the facilitator, hey, this thing is going on, you know, they're sneaking out back and smoking a joint, or whatever it is that makes somebody uncomfortable. And in the again, in the welcome circle, it's, you know, come and get me.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I'm the person in charge. That's why we have that rule in there, so that people know who's in charge. When you first introduce yourself as the facilitator at the beginning of the welcome circle,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're setting yourself apart. I'm the facilitator. This is my assistant. we're making ourselves separate from the collective for this period of time, and we're going to hold the space for this event. Stepping out of that is very important at the end as well. But people need to know who's in charge and who to go to if they need something. And we spell it out in the welcome circle who those people are.
Mhm.
They need to have the organization itself to have their back. If something comes up and you need to deal with it, it's not you saying you need to put your shirt back on. It's the organization and the welcome circle that says this is one of our foundational rules. Is that
Is it
down?
or is it the community there in the space at the moment? Because we don't have a presence there. We can't be the ones saying, put your shirt back on. I'm not
Well,
there. As
it's the language that supports the facilitator. The
Yeah.
language of the welcome circle supports the facilitator to being able to make those kind of judgment calls. That's part of
But
the
once you make the agreements in the community, it's the community that gives the facilitator the authority.
the
because-
people who are there.
Yeah, the people who are there, because of the agreements, that's what gives the facilitator the authority and the leadership.
That's an interesting question. Where does that come from?
Yeah, where does that come from?
I think it's probably a combination of both. People, and where it becomes the people who are there is at the end of the welcome circle where we say, by remaining, you are agreeing to. This is the place where if you disagree with any of this part, you're free to leave and we'll give you your money back. No risk, no harm. If you stay, you're agreeing to all of these rules, the way that we've set them out. I think the softness is built in there and the agreement and the harvesting of the agreement for the rest of this event now. You have agreed to these certain things, and part of that is to respect me as the facilitator.
But do you see that that's a passive thing? I could just sit there and be silent. And I'm telling you as a facilitator that you agree. I didn't do anything to actively agree or be part of that agreement. And that's what we're trying to address. We need active agreement. We need people to actively be in on the agreements that we're making.
Can that be done just by putting a line at the end of each one? Is that those that raise your hand if you agree to this rule?
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, that might be the way to go. Yeah. That'll be one way. Ask for some active agreement at the end of each rule, end of each set out. Yeah.
Let's see, what is this? Rule 3 is some of them are summarized at the end.
Yeah.
And in this also the sort of the ownership in the agreement is with the activity at the end of Rule 6, where it says, forms a group and talk about what's your favorite rule so far.
Yeah.
So this is a matter of taking ownership.
Ownership of which one you really like. Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of the things that you in sort of harvesting the agreement of the collective, the people who are there, and the sort of interactive part of that is built in, and you could add some more to that, but it's built in there to a certain degree. It's still very clear that the facilitator is the person in charge and gets to make judgment calls in terms of behavior of if people are following the rules. And having a rule is like, look, I didn't make the rule. That was Mary. I'm just enforcing the rule. Mary, this is all Mary.
A whole nother conversation, Adam. Because we do need our facilitators to buy into the agreements as well.
Yeah,
it's not my responsibility. I didn't make that agreement.
And is
in
the invitation, it's the drug-free, alcohol-free environment. But if somebody didn't read that part or showed up with a bottle of wine and said, yeah, come on, I could never get through something like this without a shot or two.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had people come who had something before, but like, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I do think that's something to address in the training too. Like, this is substance free.
Well,
We,
this is, I gotta put a
want-
pitch in here for the weekend training. This is,
Mhm.
it's all of Sunday morning, or most of Sunday morning is doing a role play
Mhm.
with, for skillful interventions.
Yeah.
How do you handle it if somebody is needing to add their 2 cents to everything that you say,
Hmm.
or improperly behaving or dressed or intoxicated?
Yeah. Well, I think, Adam, that you and I can talk about this some more because I really would like to make it so that it can make sense for you.
Mhm.
Because I know there's people that have your background and your same experience that will say, well, what do you mean it's not a rule? It's, what is that? What is that? That takes all the teeth out of it.
That was
Um,
a major conflict between myself and Madeline. I wanted things to be agreements, and she said that you can call it, this is from
mhm.
our conversation there when we were teaching together.
Oh,
Um, so you can call it anything you want,
mhm.
but if I have to follow it or leave, it's a rule. That, I'm quoting Madeline there.
Yes. Okay. So that's interesting. I'd like to hear more about that because it sounds like you came around to her way of thinking then. So
Yeah.
our time is
Um,
almost up. So Adam and I think we will have a conversation more about this, and then we might have another group conversation around it as well.
I
Um,
had, I had, just before you go, I had sent you a note about access to,
oh yes. Yeah, I saw
uh,
that. I don't know what happened. Are you sure you were logged into your A. Paulman account?
yeah,
Because nothing changed.
yeah, well, I think I haven't had access for some time. I just didn't need it.
Okay, I'll look at it. I did see your email. I haven't addressed it yet.
Yeah, for the board account and the, um, training account to have access to the documents and all of that stuff.
Oh, all the documents on the drive. Yeah. You should have delegate access account if you look in your list of where your little name is, right? And you hover on it and then it all pops down to say all the accounts.
Oh, yeah, it's just that, I have access to that. I can access the email for
Yeah.
these, but it's limited access and anything
Email,
else.
click on the drive. From the correct email box, click on the drive icon up in the little,
Yeah, it doesn't show up.
dots. Oh, done. Okay. All right.
I don't,
I'll work. Let's
all right.
finish up this discussion with a little ending outro, because I'd just like to hear how you're feeling about it. So I will go last. Les, do you wanna say anything in like 1 minute?
Um, yeah, thank you for all this, and Adam, thank you so much for your, formidable perspective, um, and also for, bringing the journey that took you from where you were then to where you are now with it. My hope is that, regardless of how this plays out in the future, that everybody involved remembers that, if one thing about the rules is that they presume and uh, default to some ethical purity and rectitude on behalf of the facilitators that we've already seen fail at least once. And that making it a rule, whether we call it that or not, still depends on unfortunately everybody in the room, right? Including the most newcomer participant. And if they don't see themselves as an equal partner in it, you know, most 99 times out of 100, everything will go fine, but there's that one time,
Yeah.
and like I said, I have personal experience with everything I brought up. I wish I hadn't, but I did.
Thanks,
So,
Les.
I can't not, bring it up. So thank you.
Thanks, Les. Adam, we got like 1 minute because we're going into the next training call in a few minutes.
The only thing that I love be more than a spirited conversation is one involved geeking out over facilitation.
Geeking
Uh,
out. I love it.
so
Yes.
I don't mind disagreeing with people if people don't mind me disagreeing with them. But to look at the nuances of how facilitation works and what creates a container, and there's I could talk about that all day.
Me too.
Thank you for the time to bring that up here.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, and I agree, and I'm really glad that you feel safe to come and disagree with us. I hope that that will continue to be a safety point and we can discuss. And it's not my intention to steamroller over anything or anybody with these changes, because there will be changes. We have to grow. But I hope that we can come to a point where we can at least be in alignment about it before we do it, because I don't want to have contention. I want to make sure that we can all be at least on the same boat and know that we're not, like, you're not pouring water in while we're trying to pour water out, right? Hopefully. So we'll have more discussions, and we'll figure out the way that will work for everyone to work on as we grow and move forward with these things that we're thinking about. And thank you for coming, and thank you for discussing with us. And it's good to see Magali, and we're gonna go so you have time to do the training. All right, I'm gonna turn off the recording. Thanks, guys.
Thank
See.
you.
Turn off the recording. Thanks.
It was nice to see you. Have a great day.